Happy Pirate Wednesdays, everyone. I'm Elisha Watrous.
I'm Alex Watrous.
I'm Esther Watrous.
And I'm Juji Watrous.
And we're here to remind you what day it is. A little fact about me is I do not have 6 toes on either of my feet.
No,
Now,
that's a cop-out.
that's not a cop-out.
That's okay.
The way
though.
the way I look
It
at it is
is.
I'm going to run out of facts about myself pretty quickly, especially since half of them are new this week topics we've already talked about. So I
Yeah.
figured I'd pull a Amanda show sort of spin on things.
Hey,
Alright.
so
It's
not
technically true.
not to be generic and talking about the weather, but guess what temperature it is where I'm at?
Oh boy, what temperature is it where you're at?
Well, you gotta
Is
guess.
it negative 15?
Ooh, close, very close.
Negative 14?
Nah, higher or lower. Yeah, it's a weird how those
Yeah,
numbers
lower.
work, right?
Yeah, that's how negative numbers work.
Yeah, that's how numbers work.
Wow.
Negative 17?
Very close. A little lower.
Negative 18.
Yeah, you're on the spot. You know, why can't it? Why is it never like negative 17 and a half, right? Or just 17 and a half? It's always like numerically exact, right?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it is. They just round it.
Who decides
and
Yeah,
I mean,
Alex, you learned about rounding in school, right?
Yeah.
even the 17's a rough estimate as well, because you can have fluctuation in the temperature, at least within half a degree. So new this week, what have you guys been up to?
So I just started watching the second season of Black Mirror.
Oh, really?
How's that?
Oh, not the second. It's like the fourth technically, but it's like
I thought it was the
the
third,
second-
but
no. But the three, like the first three, came out like on Netflix at the same time. So,
oh, well,
Yes.
because it wasn't originally a Netflix show. I think it was
Yeah.
on the BBC.
anyways, yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot.
I've heard good things. I haven't seen it yet.
You really should. I don't know about like the first couple seasons.
Mhm.
I don't know, because originally it was like a British TV, like a British show or something, or I don't know. It wasn't like it didn't have like American producers, and as soon as it like was turned over to like some American producers, it got like like less disturbing, I guess. It just starts off like really disturbing, the first couple of episodes.
Interesting.
But no, it's a really good show though. It really makes you think like about like weird like technology and like futuristic things. Like it's really cool.
I've heard it's kind of a bit like a really weird Twilight Zone.
Oh yeah, it's like that, but like a modern Twilight Zone, I guess.
What about the rest of you guys? What have you guys been up to?
Well,
I had an 80s movie marathon.
Sweet.
was that this Saturday?
I had it on Thursday. Yeah, it was Thursday.
Nice.
What'd you guys end up watching? Because I let you borrow a couple films, but I'm not sure what the final lineup ended up being.
We watched Airplane,
Nice.
Cool.
Adventures in Babysitting,
Good.
Gremlins,
Of course.
Weekend at Bernie's, and Alien.
Awesome. When I popped by, you only had 2 friends there. Did other people end up showing up?
Yeah, just like maybe 3 more.
Oh, well, still.
Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4 more. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's still a decent amount of people.
Yeah, no, it was a good amount. I didn't really like want that many. Like I invited more people, but I didn't really want that many to show up because I didn't really want a whole big party or anything. I just kind of wanted like a good amount of people to watch movies with.
What about you, Alex? What have you been up to?
I just realized that's a lot of movies to watch in a day. How long was that?
Actually, yeah, now that you're right, I didn't mention it. You're definitely right about that.
I think we started watching movies at 3, and then we finished like the last one at like might have been 1 in the morning.
Oh,
around
wow.
Then. Well, like we took a break to have some pizza.
No
Like,
breaks.
we took short breaks between each movie too. Other than that, so
It's good. Well, me and Claudia were working. We were working at trying to get the espresso machine that I got her a while back working, because we had never tested it out before.
Oh, the one that was hanging out in your room for a while?
Yeah. Yeah, so like I knew it was supposed to have worked, but there's like a few components. Like there's like the little like metal straw thing that like aerates milk and like makes like the frothy milk. And that had never been tested. Like I'd never seen that working, so I was like not really sure if everything was working, but sure enough, we got it to work. So it's pretty cool. Now we can like pull espresso shots whenever we
Alex,
want.
are you gonna make me a latte when I come over?
Well, I'd have to bring it with. Oh, when you come
Can
over
you make
here, yeah.
art?
Wait, what?
Can you make like any latte art?
No, Claudia hasn't shown me how to do that yet. So
No, it's okay. It takes a while.
yeah.
I only know how to make one thing,
what is that?
a heart. And
Yeah.
I kind of made a leaf too, but I didn't mean to.
So for me this week, I ended up seeing the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones on Saturday night.
What's
Which
that?
ended up being... What's the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones?
Yeah, what's that?
It's a ska band from the 90s.
A ska band.
Are they touring? What's going on with them?
What exactly
So
is ska?
All right, we'll get into ska in a moment, but so no, they're not touring. Basically, every winter, it turns out this was the 20th anniversary of it, but every like Christmas, around this time of year, just before New Year's, they do a couple Christmas shows in Boston because they're from Boston originally.
Yeah.
And so I've been meaning to go literally since high school, and there was always some reason or another that I couldn't make it. I have a ton of friends who go regularly and go at least to one, if not multiple shows each year, but I haven't been able to go until this year. So I ended up going and getting a chance to see, and it was a lot of fun. I thought I got floor seats, or standing floor tickets. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. But I ended up getting mezzanine tickets, and I hadn't realized it. And so the spot I had wasn't great at first, but I kind of sort of made friends with these two really weird old people.
What?
And then like over the course of the opening acts, like made friends enough with them that they let me kind of squeeze in. And I then ended up having a really good view of the stage. So I have a bunch of pictures and videos up on Facebook and Instagram now. But the song that you girls might actually know would be the impression that I get.
What
If you
does it
heard
sound
it,
like?
yeah, because out of the four of us, me singing a rendition of the impression I get is like really, really good idea. Good podcasting.
Yeah, no, what's ska?
Okay,
Oh,
so
But you guys
so
kind of
again-
like grew up on
Yeah.
the tail end of that being like really popular, and not only that, Elisha was still listening to that when he was in high school. So it's like, you girls should know what ska is. Come on.
No, I shouldn't know what ska is. How old was I when you were in high school?
Well, Elisha graduated in
2008.
8.
8.
Oh, you're 8. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
You're old. What the heck?
Yeah, I know.
Wait a minute. So I was like around 10. I don't know. I didn't know much music when I was that age.
Whose fault
In
is that?
when I was in elementary school, like I didn't know that much music. That's not my fault. I was in elementary school.
That's all right.
That's
Honestly,
your
ska.
fault for not showing me ska. You should have sat me down like, hey, listen to this music. But
You're
no, you
too
didn't.
busy with Hannah Montana.
You know,
but
but
anyhow.
you should have told me not to.
I tried.
They put
your
like
fault.
random. Alex would put
What?
like random songs.
I probably would have listened to you. I would have been like, yeah, you're right. Hannah Montana sucks.
Alex would put like random songs on my MP3 player, and then my iPad or my iPod. and he would just kind of just all the songs I asked for, and then he would sneak in like a random like song that I've never heard of before, and I would still listen to them. And so like to this day, like I'll recognize a song and I'll be like, oh, I know this because my brother put it on my MP3 player when I was 13.
You could have just kind of played it for us, and we'd figure it out eventually. So it's
You're
your
giving
fault.
yourself too much credit.
It's your fault. I got all my music tastes from you guys.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not even gonna bother answering your ska question because all this has turned into is a yell at Elisha for not introducing me to third wave ska. So
Actually, I have a good
anyhow,
question, Alicia. When do you know when the first time you ever like heard a song from them was, or like how you heard about them?
So truth be told, the likely first time I heard a song by them would probably be off the Digimon soundtrack.
I was gonna say I couldn't remember if it was like them on Digimon soundtrack or if it was like Smash Mouth or something or.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, Smash Mouth
Probably
would have
not
been the
Smash
Shrek.
Mouth.
Smash Mouth was on the Shrek soundtrack,
Oh,
but
yeah, that's right.
Mighty Mighty Boss Stones and Bare Naked Ladies both had their two popular songs on the Digimon soundtrack.
What
if
songs
I
were
remember
those?
correctly. That would
Was
be.
either of them the theme song?
It's 1 week.
That would have been
by
even cooler,
Bare
but
Naked
no.
Ladies. Yeah, it was 1 week by the Bare Naked Ladies, and the impression I get from the Mighty Mighty
Wait,
Boss Stones.
1 week was on the Digimon soundtrack?
It sure was.
Yeah.
That's why that's the
Sure
best
was.
movie ever.
It had a
Oh,
really good
man.
soundtrack. Like a really, really good soundtrack.
It did. I remember how old like we must have been when we saw that movie the first time. I must have been like 8 years old or something, right? And so you were
Wait,
probably
we-
like 9, 10.
Yeah, well, I would have been 10, probably.
So, and I just remember like we saw it for the first time, and it was the music probably that got us like most excited. Obviously, we liked Digimon to begin with, but I just remember thinking like, "Oh, this is like the coolest thing ever!" And we were like so hyped on Sugar and stuff. You remember that?
It sounds familiar. I don't have strong memories of the first time I saw it. Probably because we saw it so many damn times. But
No, I remember it distinctly because I remember. I remember exactly. You remember our old neighbor Carlton from down the road?
yeah,
He had
Yeah,
a
no,
copy
I
of it
remember.
on VHS, and our parents were going out to like dinner or something, and they needed like a last minute babysitter. And it was so weird because like Carlton had never babysat for us before. He was just sort of like the older kid. Like he was probably only like 13 or something. And they were
Yeah,
like,
yeah, he's
"Yeah,
only,
we'll
like,
kind of
couple
take a
years
chance
older
on
than
you
I.
tonight." It was like the only time he ever babysat for us. And then he's like, "Hey, I'm just gonna like bring over the Digimon movie," and we just watched that, and probably ate candy or something like that. I'm surprised you don't remember that too. Weird.
Well, I remember him babysitting, and I guess I vaguely, now that you mention it, remember him bringing over the Digimon movie. I hadn't realized that was the first time seeing it, but you're probably right. It probably was. But yeah, so anyhow, so in technicality, that was almost definitely the first song I had heard by them, and then it was later on in high school that I listened to them a lot more. I got a lot of my musical tastes and a lot of introductions to a number of really great bands from my friend Jimmy Wilson, and definitely anything having to do with ska I was introduced to through him. To be honest, it was at the tail end of ska's popularity when I was in high school. And during one of the Battle of Bands, there was a band called Skaba the Hut, which I still love that
Oh,
name.
of course, another
That's
ska
pretty,
band with
pretty funny.
the Communist Manifesto.
Ska
Would've been a good one.
Yeah, that would have been a pretty good one. You should start your own ska band, Juge.
No, I got that from a video game.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, then you're not clever. I take that back.
Yeah.
In running with our new format, the topic of this week is millennials. And so basically I want to kind of talk about the term millennial, the group itself, how you guys feel you fit in. I mean, in technicality, we're all considered millennials, but how much you identify
Not
with the term.
Juji.
Not
I'm like
Juji?
at the butt end of the millennials. Like
But-
they basically stop after me.
And then wait, what's
then
the
they
new
always-
one?
They always consider like
The
kids
cutoff-
these days
the cutoff-
millennials, but we're all over 18, which really annoys me.
The cutoff for for millennials is 97 or 98. So 98 is like pushing it.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And then it starts like, I don't know, 70 something.
No, it starts in
Are you
82
sure?
maybe.
Oh, I didn't realize millennials started as far back as 82.
Yeah,
Okay,
you know
yeah,
what I think? 'Cause
81. Okay, 1981 to 1988. So basically, a period of like, of a generation is 20 years. So from the first 20 year to the last 20 year. So it's almost like, basically, you know, you're in the same like period as like a different person because, like, they became like an adult sometime in that period that you became an adult as well, or
Wait,
like
wait,
you were
wait,
born.
wait, back
that
up.
makes no sense.
Back up. You said 20
Yeah, wait,
years.
I just. Yeah, it's 20 years.
Well, wait, 20 years from 88 would be to 2008.
No, 81 to. Oh wait, no, that's 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
81 to 91. Wait, no.
You know what?
Yeah.
You know what's weird?
81 to 98.
I
That's
hadn't
I don't know.
I hadn't
whatever.
realized there was a cap on it yet, because like originally when I like heard the term, I just assumed it was like because it was being defined differently by different people. Some people,
Yeah, because everyone's confused about what it is.
well, they like the beginning at least, like some defined it as like when like home computers were first like introduced, and then others define it like when the internet like really took off. So that, but it's like kind of a gray area in that respect. You know what I mean?
Generations tend to be more of a gray area. There's people try to make it a finite thing, but it's fairly arbitrary. So it's more like people generally born roughly around this time fall into such and such generation, whether it's baby boomers or Generation X or millennials.
Well, if you're on like the cutoff of either end, you can kind of consider yourself as like either that generation or like the upcoming one, is how I take it. Because I feel like a lot of people like born in 1981 are probably like, oh no, I'm not a millennial. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like they can either say, okay, like, yeah, I'm a millennial technically, but I like identify more as like this, as like a, what is it, Generation X.
Hey, you know what's a good thing to look forward to though? I mean, eventually when we grow up and then the next generation takes our place, we can kind of just throw all the complaints onto them instead, and we kind of just slip into the night.
They're killing the
Well-
napkin industry with their avocado toast.
Oh boy.
You know what's
Did
funny?
not
I
complain.
hear
But
a
the
lot
next
of
generation
like,
is already here.
I hear so many bad things, but I also hear like a lot of hypocritical things. You know, I was
That's how it
gonna
always
look
goes.
up like I could have sworn there was like a list or something, and I couldn't find anything that was like worthy of like repeating. You know, but.
Mhm.
Oh, actually, okay, I have to explain this, like my whole theory thing again, because it doesn't make any sense. So you can scratch out the other part. Okay, so what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say
we'll totally
is
cut that
like the reason why it's such a wide range is like 20, like 18 to 20 years kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think is because like if you're born in like the same whatever generation, anyone else in that generation isn't old enough to be your parent. They might technically be old enough because like a 16, 17, 18-year-old can like bear a child, but it's unlikely for them to be like at the age to bear you. Does that make sense? Because if you were born in 81 and you had a kid in 97 or something like that, you'd be what, like 18 or 19 years old, or I don't know, somewhere you'd basically either be a late teenager or like an early teenager or whatever. You'd be pretty much still considered a kid.
Let me throw a little wrench into your engine there. The problem with that is that people are constantly being born, so in, like, you know what I mean? Like, so every day new person is being born, so you have people that range from, like, you know what I mean? Like seconds away from each other in age. You know what I mean? So you have this huge spectrum. So you can't. It's not like everybody's born on the same day, and then they all have kids when they're adults on the same day either. Of course, that's getting weirder now too, because not as many people are having kids. So that also sort of changes it a little bit, but.
Yeah, well, that's not what I'm saying, because there's only so much time that people can be born in one day, and if you take that, like, and you draw it out in like 18 years or whatever, like, most likely if you were born whatever, and then you turn 18, like, most likely you won't have a kid, like, you won't be at that point where you'll have children, so you can't consider like another millennial to be like young enough to be your kid. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
that's
like,
what I'm saying.
She's saying, like, a parent and a child wouldn't be in the same generation.
Exactly. Or like they could be in the same generation, but it's like kind of unlikely.
Not likely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you had a
Like,
kid when you
by
were like
society
15,
standards.
but
Well, like
yeah.
I mean, like, by society standards. Obviously, there's like you can have a kid early as like 11 years old. Like, like, I'm just saying by like American standards.
Yeah, by that sort of metric, I mean, that gives you a rough idea. Again, it's a fairly arbitrary thing, the whole concept of generations, just because at the point Alex was getting at, people are constantly having kids, so you're the state of when a generation would begin and when a generation would end. It's I don't know, it's constantly in flux. Like, where do you draw that line? And that's what even people who study generations and study culture and changes in culture usually have an issue with, and why it's always such a gray topic, and there's always so much kind of silly debate over the whole thing.
I think it can be easier. I think it'd be easier to define like generations or just like groups of people growing up around that time period by like looking at like the type of technology that they had. I think a lot of people do that. That's where the whole theory about like, oh, well, millennials started when, you know, computers and internet, blah, blah, blah kind of thing were more like accessible. And it's sort of an easier way to look at that as well. And I think in the future we'll probably mark the next generation like with like smartphones probably, just because of how like influential they've been.
There's already a name for the next generation. The next generation is already like as of I think this year, the next generation is already like hitting their teens or something, or later.
Yeah, well, because like
or
I
adults.
guess if it started,
they're already in high school.
If the next generation starts say like 1999 or 2000, they're already like technically 18 or 19 by now.
Yeah, do you know, I think I saw something on Instagram that said that December 31st, 2017 is the last time that our generation and the new generation, our generation is all adults, and the new generation is
starting to become adults.
Like teenagers. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from today on, everyone, the newest generation is also now starting to become adults.
Interesting.
Based on the 98 like number, or the 98 cutoff point. But does anyone remember what the new generation is supposed to be called?
Generation iPad?
I heard they were
Might as
named
well
after
be.
iPhones or something. It was something. But
Wait, no, it's really starts with an I?
One of the nicknames for it.
Oh, Generation Z?
Wait, really?
Is that what it's called?
It's Generation Z, but there was like a nickname that because millennials are technically generation. Was it Y maybe?
Yeah, it would be Y. That's how the alphabet goes.
Yeah. So they have multiple names, but so the next one's Generation Z, but they have like a different name.
All right, so I just
Okay.
I just looked it
also,
up. And
Generation Z, also known as post millennials, the I generation,
founders,
generation.
plurals,
or the
Eh,
what? Okay,
the
I've
Homeland
never heard-
generation. Yeah, the I generation is really the only one that I've actually heard. Post millennials is kind of weird. It's like a postmodernism approach to
Yeah, to millennials.
Millennials.
I think
Alright.
they don't want to get rid of the name. They want to reuse it as much as they can.
Yeah, because they're stuck on that name for some reason. Because they've been blaming us for so many things for so long that they want to keep blaming millennials somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Alright, so-
well, that's the previous generation always does that, and I saw part of an article in the New York Times about how they want to move away from using the term millennials because it has such a negative connotation at this point that like as soon as someone starts saying "oh, millennials," you just tune out because you know it's going to be this big tirade about how terrible our generation is and how many things we're doing wrong and
Even though
whatever
like
the
things
case might be.
like high school bullying down, you know what I mean? Like gun violence and things also down. Well, I mean for the younger generation, like you don't see as many like kids doing that. I know it's hard to believe.
Homophobia down
Yep.
thanks to
True.
us. I can't say
Check.
anything about like gun violence because I don't live in we don't live in an area with a lot of gun violence at all.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're gonna have variations in areas, but I in general have no idea what the stats are. And I know a lot of the time because we're so interconnected and because we have instant access to all this information, there's a lot of things like shootings and such that when they occur, we're a lot more aware of it. So it seems like it's happening more frequently, and that people are more violent or terrible things are happening more often, but a lot of the time we're just more aware that these things are happening before they're happening behind closed doors, or by the time the information got to us, it was kind of old hat.
Well, in another
So-
way you can think about it, our bubbles have expanded as well just because of the internet and the access that we have to information. And it's like, yeah,
Definitely.
I mean, like before, it would have taken, like you're saying, like again, it would have taken like a month before you found out, oh, in California, on the other side of the country, some terrible thing happened. But now it's just like, it's instant. Like the second it's happening, people are already commenting on it, and the information is out there like the moments afterwards. So it just,
even during events now,
yeah, exactly.
things are happening.
People are like on, they're Snapchatting or they're using, you know what I mean, apps and stuff like that, and they're like,
Live video.
yep. So it's very
So,
interesting change.
do we all everyone here do we all consider ourselves millennials? Gigi, do you consider yourself a millennial?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I don't know why I'd be the next generation. What would make me that? I think part of why I'm a millennial is because I have older siblings that are millennials. Whereas if I was the oldest sibling of
That's kind of true because
then I'd probably fit more in their group.
Because when you have older siblings, you sort of a lot of the stuff you learn growing up is things that they've passed down to you. So
that's true.
we wouldn't have the same knowledge as from the mid 90s that to the early 2000s that we have now if it wasn't for you guys, because I think a lot of the stuff that we thought and we did and we played with and we believed came from our siblings who were born in the early 90s.
Wait, if that's so true, then why did you a couple of years ago ask me how to put a VHS tape into the you're not learning
The
anything
VC
from us then.
The VCR.
Wait, did I?
Yeah.
Who asked you that?
Why would I ask you that? It's literally something you can figure out on your own.
Well, you were putting it in wrong, so. And I remember
Well,
laughing
Dave,
at you.
you didn't give me a
Hadn't done
chance.
it
not
in a
knowing how to
while.
put it in. I was like, really? It's like, oh my god.
There might have been another one like already
The
in
thing
there.
is
and I was
I
just
always
like,
put it in wrong, so I really don't know what you're proving here.
Well, at least you're consistent, I suppose.
you gotta put it in wrong before you put it in right. Sometimes.
So it's funny that Juji, even though she's kind of at the tail end of what would be considered millennials, considers herself a millennial, whereas myself, I mean, certainly in technicality, I'm very much right in the middle of the generation of millennials. But I don't know, it's a mixed bag how often I actually feel like I relate to that group, or kind of like the concept of what makes that group what it is.
I think
Elisha,
that's-
knowing you in high school, you're a millennial.
And I you know,
Oh, really?
I think you have a good
Yeah.
point, but like I think a lot of that comes from the stereotypes of millennials, and like sometimes like people have like blamed things like the ways that kids acted in like 2010, they blamed that on millennials, even though most of us were adults at that time and had no relation to how like kids acted. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like there's a lot of like misconceptions, and people just sort of because this new generation hasn't totally formed yet. A lot of people are kind of grouping the new generation in with the millennials, is what I think is happening.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right on that point. I think, and again, it goes back to the fluidity of the concept of a generation and how it's hard to pinpoint who's in what generation sometimes, even with a cutoff point. So yeah, I think we're definitely often still being blamed for the I generation. Can we start making fun of them already? Are we old enough to start being like,
let's
those
make
I
bets
wanna
on when
stop
that's
that
gonna
whippersnappers."
happen.
Can I stop that trend, like, of making fun of the next generation?
They're not even old enough to speak for themselves.
Mike, they can't even speak. They're like 2 years old.
If you can write a
No, they
tweet,
can-
you can speak.
They can speak.
Yeah,
They can
okay,
speak,
alright.
but they're not like most of them aren't adults. So
No,
let's not make
well, as
fun of
we're
them
saying,
yet. While they're still in
Wait,
their...
why can't we make fun of kids?
Because they all make a lot of mistakes, and we just gotta
Yeah, that
wait
makes
it
it so
out.
much easier.
Yeah, I know.
I think the only thing that I would criticize is like social media, because I feel like there's a lot of like things that are just uncensored and toxic that like me as a kid I'm so glad I wasn't exposed to, but as a teenager like that's totally fine. Like I was kind of exposed to like all sorts of like weird stuff because I was in high school, but I feel like there's so many young kids now who just have like such easy access to internet and like memes and like random things that they have no clue what it's about or like what's going on, and they just kind of like have all this stuff almost shoved in their faces almost. If that makes sense. Like, and it's not even just like about censoring like to make sure that kids are like looking at their like age appropriate stuff, but it's also like I don't know, just making sure that they stay like a kid and they're not too distracted from that, if that makes sense.
I'd have to disagree with you on that, although I think that's like the fundamental like argument here is that, you know, there's sort of this divide, and that we want to protect our kids and have them have them be as innocent for as long as possible as they can. But I mean, like, when you say that stuff, I think back to like my childhood, and even like in like 4th grade, like kids were listening to like Eminem, like uncensored music. I mean, like I'd go to like birthday parties and sleepovers, and like my friends would want to watch like the Jackass movie, and it like that's like 4th, 5th grade. I mean, I was like 10 years old, and should I have been watching that stuff? Probably not. you know, but I was, you know, and I think kids are gonna find it no matter what. That's the problem, you know.
Well, I agree with that. Like, I'm not saying that like we used to be better at like censoring or anything like that, and I'm just saying like because it's just so like there's just so much. I don't know. Like, first of all, I get overwhelmed even as a 20-year-old at all the information on my phone. Like, I get overwhelmed by how many like comments there are on people's things. Cyberbullying, like hatred, all that stuff has increased a lot, I think, since I've started using the internet a lot more in social media. And so I think those are more things that I'd be like focused on trying to like I mean those are things that I'd be more worried about, is just like how intense like all this new like information is, and like it's also really easy to think that your life is in the internet and that like that defines you and that your social media defines you, and I think that's kind of sad. And that's an issue with like people who are in our generation too, is like once you get like your first Instagram or something, like you want like 100 followers like right off the bat or whatever. But I just feel like I think teenagers and adults can handle that a lot more than like a 5-year-old kid who like just decides to like post something and then gets a bunch of mean comments or something like that, like on YouTube or whatever. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Well, another thing that I was thinking about too was that it's kind of a scary thing, but when you realize it, when we think about it, it may or may not really be a big issue, and that is like how, because of like phones and the internet, like you're constantly being berated by like ads and things like that. But what they've said about millennials in general, and I'm sure they'll say the same thing about the next generation, is that as you know these kids grow up with this like constantly in front of them, they kind of like learn the ability to kind of like discard it if it's not important. You know what I mean? So like kids that grow up with it are gonna be like, oh, it's just a thing that's there. You know what I mean? Like they don't really take it seriously, and I think that's going to definitely be a future concern, because people are going to be like, well, you know, like kids, I mean, if you got a 5-year-old kid, he's got a cell phone, and he's got access to the internet, and, you know, he's getting like thrown ads at him. Are we going to end up with like a society of zombies who only just buy the things, you know, that show up on ads on their phones and stuff, you know?
Well, yeah, actually, do you know what? Not to cut Juji off or yourself, but think about it this way. So, with our generation, we would watch TV all the time and cartoons, and we'd be bombarded with all sorts of commercials. And now these days we watch Netflix and we don't have any commercials. So you could easily say from our generation or even the generation before us, the same type of concept where they're watching TV all the time, or the generation before that was listening to the radio, they always had commercials on there. So each generation is being bombarded with tons of advertising that ends up becoming part of like their normal everyday experiences.
And I'm not saying that. I'm definitely not saying that those ads don't sort of form young minds, because it definitely does. But I mean,
well, they do.
But we totally had commercials like that, kind of like, hey, that's a really cool toy, and then we'd get obsessed with it because we saw a commercial of it. I mean, that's sort of commonplace. So I guess it's to be expected is what I'm saying. I don't think it's like bad, because I think it's kind of just inevitable is the issue.
All right. Well, I really like how this discussion turned out, but I do believe we're coming to the close of this episode. So I would like to thank our 2 listeners, our mom and Uncle Richie, for tuning in as always. Esther, want to tell the folks at home where they can find us and how they can send in listener questions and suggestions?
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook. You can find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube at Pirate Wednesdays with an S. And you can also find us on Twitter at Pirate Wednesday without the S. and you can contact us Pirate Wednesday at piratewednesdays@gmail.com with any questions you have or comments. And don't forget to rate, subscribe, and leave comments.
All right. I forgot to actually pop in. We have one more song of the week. We'll continue to do it, but we are now at the 10th song. So I'll be posting the Spotify playlist sometime in the coming week. And our newest song on our Song of the Week playlist is Barrett's Privateers by the Real Mackenzies, off the album West Winds, and it's a really fun piratey sea shanty sort of song that really fits the general theme that we like to go with here on Pirate Wednesdays. But without any further delay, Jude, you want to sign us off?
Don't forget to shave your belly with a rusty razor.